All right, back by absolute popular demand, and we've certainly even upgraded since last time you and I have spoken because we now have beautiful lights. We've got this awesome setup. I've learnt from my last mistakes, but I have the one and only Mr. Chris Rubie. Welcome by popular demand. You're back.
Thanks for inviting me back. It's great to chat to you about issues that change our lives, I suppose. Yeah,
Yes, it's quite a dire time right now, isn't it?
absolutely. And everybody's panicking, everybody's feeling nervous. What are we doing? We're sort of stuck between hysteria and sensibility, and we're just not sure where to go next.
Yeah, and I've been thinking a lot recently, and I suppose a lot of us have been. It's such dire times right now where at such a fast pace, everything seems to be unfolding in quite a hysteric way. And I've gone on my own roller coaster of I panicked about this and I'm freaked out about that, but I'm almost at the state now where I see a lot of beauty and hope and optimism about what's going to happen or what's going to come. And I've been AWOL from doing my social media things and my podcast for some time now, and the reason I think was because I've been kind of almost self-isolating myself with my own demons, with what I've been going through, and just feeling lost from completing a degree and then now not getting work and all that stuff. But now the whole world is being forced into this state of isolation, or what I've learned to call is solitude, which we'll talk about in a moment. And I'm wondering, I wanted to project and broadcast what I've been thinking, and I want to hear more about what you've been experiencing and thinking about everything that's going on.
Well, I hope in our conversation today we'll unpack that a lot. What does this really mean for us? For everyone, not just you and I. But can we learn from it? Surely any trauma or any sort of experience we go through, we can learn from. So hopefully we can sort of bring that out in our conversation. Is it such a dire thing that we're going through? On the surface, absolutely. Lives are being threatened and lives have already been lost. So let's look at that. There are a lot of negatives and we could focus on that, but that could be probably would be our downfall. If we just focus on, oh no, half the population is going to be infected, half the population, or half of those are going to die, and we're in dire straits. Can we look at this as a learning curve so that we either don't make the same mistakes again in the future, and I suppose that the isolation, without sort of getting into that too early yet, is that a period of time where we can restock, rethink about where we are individually as people, and what role do we play in community? What role do we play with ourselves? How can we learn from this? How can we come out of this troubled time? And I have to say, even in my lifetime, and I've lived a lot longer than you, this is probably the worst time I've ever seen. My mother, she experienced the Second World War. She experienced a depression. So in a sense, she's been through these troubled times before. I've never been through that. I'm a baby boomer. This is really taking all us baby boomers by surprise. We're supposed to be able to get toilet paper at the thing. That's natural. It's always there, Why is it not there now? What do we do in the future when I do run out of that? In the old days, I think they used newspaper, but let's not go down that line.
I saw a video of using leaves. Getting back to basics. Leaves are great. Sometimes they're wet if it's been raining, so you get a bit of moisture in. There's plenty of ways we can go about life without the commodities that we've grown to become accustomed to.
I'm thinking about setting up a company that sells bidets.
Oh yeah, I don't know how that's not already a thing all over the world. I've been to Japan. We went to Japan together.
Yeah, we did.
One of the most incredible things over there,
Going to the toilet was an experience.
Yes, and this is not the way I wanted this podcast to go, but it's important to look at all different aspects.
Yeah, the point is that let's stop for a minute. Let's not see this as it is terrible in a sense, but let's not sort of go too far down that line, oh, woe is me, what am I going to do kind of thing. Let's look at how we can use this time for the benefit of mankind, really.
Yes, and I've been thinking a lot about this recently. So in light of my last 3 or 4 months since sort of being active on social media and what I've been doing in my community, I've been really trying to break habits, right? So I've been really trying to look at recreating myself and looking at what's really important to me. And I started doing this, at least 2 months ago, and then, I'm tripping over and getting back up and tripping over and getting back up. And it's been in the last 4 or 5 weeks that I'm starting to really see a lot of clarity. Now, that's because I'm putting in a lot of work. And one of the things I want to talk about is this book that is written by Joe Dispenza. And I've talked about him before in my podcast. He's just incredible. And it just backs up all this idea of quantum physics and all these types of things of how you can rewire the neurons in your brain, change your habits to become a better person, or the person you've always wanted to be, as per se. Now, I'll talk about in a moment, but what I'm trying to say with this is that now I feel like the whole world's kind of been forced into this time of solitude, and I call it solitude because I just learned from Jay Shetty, who creates all those great videos online, that if we call it isolation, it already creates this panic sense about it, because isolation is what we do to prisoners when people break the law, you do something wrong by mankind, we put you in isolation. So let's not call it that, because that already creates panic. It already puts us in survival mode, which creates stress and cortisol and all that bad stuff. So let's call it solitude. Now, we just had a little conversation about solitude. What's your understanding of that, and how can we use that to better ourselves during this time?
Well, I think we all know that solitude can be a productive time for us. We all need time out. That's another way of putting it, isn't it? Time out. And I think we need time out because when we don't have time out, we're bombarded with all sorts of distractions in the world, be it media, even your friends, or the things you've got to do just to survive. And we can be so caught up in all of that we forget to actually stop for a minute, look back, what are we doing? Is what we're doing right? Are we just in sort of autopilot? Will the autopilot always take us where we want to go? I suppose if you're in a plane and you want to get to Los Angeles from Sydney, you put it on autopilot, it will get you there, right? But we're a bit more complex than airplanes, and it's okay to get there, but how do we get there? What do we learn along the way so that we can always get to LA? And so I think solitude probably is a better word. Isolation sort of conjures up the idea of cut off from the world. And by and large, a lot of people are now going to be a little bit cut off the world, with the exception of the internet, of course. And we get a bit fearful of that we're going to be cut off the world. Oh no, I'm on my own now. I've got to fend for myself. And that pushes you into that survival mode. And that's when we're likely to make mistakes, I suppose, and neglect thinking that, okay, sometimes it's okay to be on your own, as long as in that time you learn some things so that the next time that you're forced to be on your own, you're going to do it better.
Yeah, and this idea of being in isolation and feeling blocked out from the world and all this sort of stuff, that's where we do conjure up these it's almost that false sense of what's actually going on, and we start freaking out about things. And I think and one thing I love about, you mentioned this idea of survival, right? So one thing that I've been looking at that Joe Dispenza talks about is and we talked about this earlier. We've been actually talking this podcast for the last 3 hours. We've only just hit record now, haven't we?
Yeah.
But he talks about this idea of love, which you mentioned earlier, which God talks about as well. Love can cure all. Love can cure everything, right?
The right kind of love.
The right kind of love, right? So it's obviously a lot more complex than that. And well, before I go on, I should clarify to people listening, like, we're not doing this to sort of create the tips and facts of what the virus is and what's going on.
No.
It's more about, we want to give our input for our expertise from what we know, and you as well in your humanitarian and Christian experience on how we can best survive, or not survive, but actually thrive through this. Come out the other end.
survive and thrive.
Right, survive through it and then thrive and become a better sense of society afterwards, or as you say, land in LA safe and sound with a new sense of elevated emotions. So yeah, I mean, when we're even talking about quantum physics and the physiology of what happens to our brains, so when you experience more love, you lower the brainwaves, which creates more, more sense of peace inside of you, and that's where healing happens. So when you talk about, and we had this conversation about competition earlier. So now we're in a state of competition because we're fighting for toilet paper. We're fighting for resources, right? And what that's doing is creating stress and fear and hatred and all these negative things. And then we're being put in isolation. It's one of the worst things we could be doing to ourselves. And what that does here is, and I'm just quoting what some graphs in Joe Dispenza's book, is it creates much higher frequencies of, which is, not coherence in our brain. So that creates the stress system to freak out and release cortisol and adrenaline and all that sort of stuff. So I guess what I'm trying to get at here is like, well, if we're in solitude, what can we do with our technology, with our resources to reach out to people in a safe way? Because we need to know the facts of what the social contact can do to us right now anyway. What do you think we should be doing during this time, like with this sort of information?
That's a big question, really.
It is, it put you on the spot here.
It means different things for different people. It depends on where you're at on the number line to start with, right? If you're a person that might be financially stable, then maybe you'll fare better because you don't have that stress upon you, and you know you're going to get through that because you've got a good stock of toilet paper or supplies in your cupboard and you don't have to go out and panic buy. If you are not reliant upon your income from your job, obviously you're going to be a little bit more at peace there, and you'll think, oh, well, this is good. I get a time to stay at home and do the things that I want to do. So it does mean different things for different people. So I can only probably answer from my own perspective. Now, recently I was told I couldn't go into work. I work in a school with primary school kids, and they've decided, they haven't closed schools yet, they might, but they haven't done it yet, but they've decided to limit the contact with the outside world, any external providers, which is me. I'm a chaplain in a school. They've decided to tell us to stay away. Not only that, I'm over 65, so I'm in the vulnerable category anyway. So again, it's an enforced solitude. And so I've had to take stock of that. Here I have time on my hands now. I can do some things that help the school from home. Not a lot of things, because my job actually involves social interaction with the children. So I've got to now, I do a coaching course as well, and one of we have a word called maximizers. It's like an acronym, and all the letters mean something. And the R in that means realign vigorously. So I could say, oh no, my life's been ruined. I don't have the job now. I don't see the other staff members. I don't get to see the kids that I was in the process of helping. So now I have to realign vigorously. Okay, what's another way I can do that? And a lot of the TV studios are doing it. They're reporters, like the weather or the news or whatever. They're reporting from home. So we are lucky that we're in a digital age where we can do that. In 1918, when they had the Spanish flu, they didn't have a digital age. Can you imagine what isolation or solitude was doing there? That was the literal cut-off. We don't have that. So we can feel positive to think that, well, if it was going to happen, this is the time for it to happen, when we technologically advance to the point where we can remain in contact with one another. Now, I say that sweepingly because I know some people might not be able to afford a computer. So those people wouldn't have that technological connection with other people. I have a 94-year-old mother, your grandmother, who is in that boat, but where she is in an aged care home, I've been able to set up, through the lifestyle coordinator, an iPad, and she'll be able to take that iPad because it's portable, which is good, and you've got a portable device there, take it to a room. My mum doesn't have to click anything. We just set up for her, and there it is, and I can talk to her on that. So that's good.
Very innovative, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Other thing, that's the technological side.
Well, I want to step in here because there's a few things that I'm loving what you're saying, and there's things that are coming up for me. And I'm going to forget them if I don't say them because they are very relevant to what you're talking about. And so one thing first, you talked about doing coaching and things, and as most people listening know, that's what I've been all about, coaching and counselling. And in the last 3 or 4 years of learning about all that, the biggest thing and the number one thing that we do is get people to stop. That's the first step to making any change in any part of the world. You got to stop and reassess. We have to stop and become more self-aware, become more aware of what's actually going on. And the last time we did a podcast, we talked about how we're so bombarded all the time with all these companies and advertising and all that throwing us in the wash, basically.
And we have knee-jerk reactions to all these things, and we go into either the survival mode or a mode that we're taught how to respond to this thing. What came to mind quickly was those who suffer from anxiety, right? They may have been traumatized by something in the past, and then all of a sudden there's a situation that is a similar setup, although maybe not, but it flicks the switch, and bang, they go into panic mode, into the fight or flight or freeze. I know one lady that I had as a client went into the freeze mode. She just dropped to the ground, and people thought she had a stroke because she saw some Middle Eastern people, and way back in time, Middle Eastern people robbed her house. So her life script now is all Middle Eastern people are bad. I've just seen one, I'm in danger, panic mode, drops to the ground. But
I saw I think it was the Norwegian Prime Minister or President, I'm not sure what their political system is. He actually did this at the podium only last week. From everything that's going on, he's so overwhelmed, he just passed out. With the pressure of everything and everyone on him, and the weight of his nation is on his shoulders.
Well, who knows what was going on there, but that's the point. Solitude, if we can get back to what we started talking about, can help us with that. Because the situation's made us stop, right? And it is good to stop. Hey, we do that with kids at primary school, they might, there's a thing called Stop, Think, Act, and I'm actually writing a program about that at the moment. And we get the kids to say, stop what you're doing. That's the first thing. Stop hitting that kid over the head with a brick or something, Then think.
Does that actually happen in schools?
Well, maybe not a brick.
It may have happened to you, and I know that explains a lot. Being hit
maybe not a brick, but there's sticks around.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that. Otherwise, I'd have to make a mandatory reporting.
No, you won't. You're right. You're safe.
Okay.
So the next one is think. Stop, think, and so we're getting the kids. Okay, why did you want to hit that kid on the head? Well, he called me names. Well. How do you feel when people call you names? So we try to go through the process, harder with younger kids because, like Freud says, they're still in that sort of id stage, that survival stage. They don't have the maturity or the brain connections to process it. So you just got to do a repeated change of behaviour. Hitting people on the head is bad, that's the level there. But the older they get, you can start to get them into the think mode, and then when they understand what it is that is really happening, like the bully called you a name because he's insecure, not you. And then they can act, and they know how to appropriately act the next time that name is called to them. They can walk away from it and still feel important as a person or self-valued as a person, and won't even worry about people calling them names. So we're in that situation now where we're told to stop. But stop what you're normally doing, because if you keep doing what you're doing, like being within 1.5 meters, you are at risk of dying. That's the bottom line, isn't it? And we don't want everybody to die, We want to restrict the amount of people that are going to die in this pandemic. So stop. So we all have to stop our behaviour. That's taking a while for the community to get latch onto that. I walked down to the beach today, and there's still heaps of people down there. I did notice a slight difference. to even yesterday, the umbrellas were a bit further apart from each other.
Yeah.
Normally they congregate around the flags,
Right.
but now they'll spread right up the beach. And I thought, well, that's good, you know. It is hard to stop your behaviours immediately, so we need time to process that.
Yes. So people in Australia, we're not directly affected. Well, I mean, we are, but we're not as heavily affected as other countries like Italy or obviously China and Iran and some of those other countries. But that's why I think that in Australia we haven't really. I mean, we've had the panic buy, you know, like stockpile thing going on, but then we're still at Bondi Beach getting filled with thousands of people a couple of days ago. So there's a sense of some people actually being smart about it, and some people thinking, "Oh, it's not my problem because it's not directly affecting me yet."
It's part of our character to say, "Oh, it ain't gonna happen to me. I'm all right, mate."
It's a bit of the Australian culture of the relaxed sort of whatever.
But I think the more cases we hear about, it's going to be a sharp reminder. Hey, wait a minute, this is serious.
Yeah, well, we need to
treat it seriously. And although at the moment you're unlikely to catch it because we have a small number of cases relative to our population, that will change daily.
Yeah.
And the moment that escalates, you're going to be thankful that we were told to stop what we were doing. And so it's about processing it all and seeing the benefit of it all, not only for ourselves, but what can we learn in the way that we interact with others? There's another thing that we could talk about.
Well, let's get back to, because we are, like, I love what we're talking about, and we're kind of going down the realm of where we're probably not the professionals in all the facts and all the truth of the science behind what's going on, right? Like, you know, we're talking about how, yes, we may have been in contact with it already, and, you know, we need to be more informed, right? But let's come back to this idea of, well, what can we do when we're at home? What can we do now that we're in solitude? And another big question I want to talk to you about is, well, what does God have to play in all this?
Yeah, that's a big question, and you could go one of a few ways. You could say, you could blame God. If you don't think God exists, you could say, well, okay, this is just normal because there are viruses in the world, and we just got to approach this from a scientific way, and we'll get through it because science will fix it all up. You could be appeased by that thought. Or it could be back to panic where we think, well, gee, we don't have a vaccine. Are we going to have a vaccine? I'm a bit nervous that they won't come up with something because they better come up with something quick, otherwise I'm going to die.
Yeah.
So there's several ways you could approach it.
And the reason why I asked about God is because I saw this video which I shared with you about, it was on TikTok, one of my favorite apps. It makes me feel young again.
Kids love that too.
So it was just talking about this verse in the Bible, which I want to quote now, which kind of really brought to my attention the reality of what's going on, and how it's maybe not an accident or like a big bang sort of thing just kind of randomly happening. It's not this invisible thing taking us all down is not necessarily an accident, depending on what you believe. But this verse, so it's in so we're in 2 Chronicles 7:13 for those who love to read their Bibles. When I shut up the heavens so that there is no rain, so we experienced that in Australia with the bushfires, or command locusts to devour the land, which is happening in Africa, or send a plague among my people, so what's going on right now. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, so repent from their sins, then I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sin and heal their land. Now, this really stood out to me because I mean, those 3 massive things have been happening within the last 6 months, and now we're being forced into solitude, and I'm already seeing beautiful things come out of this. Right, we've seen the pollution in China dramatically drop. We've seen fish and dolphins and swans in the canal rivers. I'm seeing some, even in my community, I'm seeing beautiful forms of connection, like your son and your daughter-in-law, my brother and sister-in-law. You know, I saw them a picture of them doing puzzles together at home. And even my brother, who I live with, he's making all these video calls to people who he never would have done before. So there is a lot of beauty in what's going on. But coming back to what this verse kind of says, now we're in solitude. Now we have to do it like almost like like an inventory of our lives. What's going on with my life and my direction? What is all this really about? What is money? What is, my job, my profession, my love life? All this stuff we have to reassess, right? And what do you think of all that?
Well, if we can get back to the verse, you could easily fall into the trap of thinking, and a lot of people view God this way, that he's this old man in the sky, a long beard, and he's got a big fat stick on us, and he's ready to whack us over the head with it, right?
Yeah, what's with whacking people over the head with things? Bricks and sticks and... Do we need to have a chat?
No, I don't have a problem.
I've got a degree now, I can help you.
Thank you, yeah. So we could have that image of God, that he's a God who makes these things happen to make us suffer. He loves seeing us suffering. But boy, that sells it really short from what is really happening, right? Some of us, including myself, sometimes need a whack over the head, so to speak, to wake up to what's happening.
I'm not allowed to have social contact, so I can't.
And you can't whack me on the head. No, you can have a long stick. You could have a 1.6 metre stick.
Yes, that's true.
So if we had that image of God, we're distorted in what that verse is trying to tell us, right? If you put it in context to the rest of the scriptures, right, God is love. There's a verse that simply said that, God is love. Or another verse that said, for God so loved the world, right? And we see that everything he does is out of the motivation of love. So if we put it in that context, we can see that the only reason God might want to discipline us or create hardship for us is to bring us into a better place than we were before. Right? The example of Job in the Bible is a classic one where, and by the way, there is a verse, people don't know this, but there's a verse in the Bible.
Some sort of secret verse that only you know.
No.
Are you authorized to share this with us?
No, people, I think, might know it, but they're trying to block it out because it actually says, I, the Lord God, create disaster. It's in Isaiah, right? 40 something, right? And we don't want to think that God creates disaster. We only want to think of God as love and creates good things for us, And it's all a bunch of roses, right? Jesus said, in this world you'll have trouble, but take heart, I've overcome the world. So there's another half of that verse that says, hey, there's trouble in this world, and there'll always be trouble in this world because human beings are fallen creatures. Everyone would agree, whether you believe in God or not, that we're not perfect. And there's a bit of narcissism in us all, right? And that has an impact on the whole society when we adopt narcissistic behaviour, or we stockpile all the toilet paper and forget everybody else, it has an impact on others. And why? It's because basically we were created as social creatures. So God wants us to pull us up, maybe doing the stop thing again, and saying, stop what you're doing, because they're having a major impact on the overall world here. And to wake you guys up, I might need to release this virus that was probably always there anyway. And then we want you to learn from that, That's my take on it. That can be challenged.
I guess from anyone who's not religious or not Christian, or just from the view of the secular world, the hard thing to understand is, well, if God is love, why would he put this pain and suffering amongst us? And I understand your point, and I see that that is one of the only ways to really discipline us, to get us to have have that inventory of what's going on in our lives and where our values align. But it is hard. It's hard to understand. Well, why would God inflict this on us?
Well, again, I can only get back to what I said before. It's out of his love, because he cherishes us so much.
It's like tough love.
Yeah, I guess so. Why do we discipline our children when they touch the hot stove? It's tough love. We say you cannot touch. It's an absolute stop what you're doing. You can't do that, because I want to protect you. I want to teach you that touching hot stove will end up burning your fingers off. We might withdraw privileges for the older child. We'll do things that we don't want to, and I've found that as a parent. when I withdrew all your privileges, that's probably why you're so impoverished today.
Thanks for telling everyone.
When we withdrew your privileges...
Is it because my pants are ripped? Sorry, continue.
We didn't want to do that because it goes against your inbuilt nature. I want to give you good things all the time, you know. Like maybe a better example is you want another ice cream or another lolly, you know.
Always.
And I know that you love lollies, and to see the delight on your face when you're eating that another chubba chub, then that will make me fulfilled as a parent because, oh, look, I've made my child happy. But I see the bigger picture. The bigger picture is that if you keep eating those chubba chubs, you're not going to have any teeth by the time you're 15, you know. So I need to have tough luck. No, you can't have that other chubba chub or that other sweet. I need to put limits on us, and maybe that's what God's doing now, putting limits on us to say, hey guys, you're running away with it again, you know. I need to pull you back, get you to stop. Maybe the only way I can do it is in a drastic way to make you wake up to yourself. And then if you, in your time of solitude, you start to realize what really is happening, and you become a better person because of it, be more connected to God or even more connected to one another. It's got to have a positive benefit. Yeah. I think we'll come out of this with some interesting insights for all of us, and I think our society will be better as we come out of it. Sad to say that some people are already passing away, which is the cost of that because of the way we operate as human beings. It's like the Second World War, you know. I'm a baby boomer. Why? Because we learnt out of the Depression, and we built up the economy again, and we thought war is a bad thing, you know. We still fall into that trap, and we still have wars. But you know, hopefully these things will teach us something.
Yes. Yeah, thank you for that insight. It's something that's been on my mind for a while, and when I have conversations with other people, that seems to come up. It's like, well, yeah, how can we best understand this? But that definitely provides, in our short time, obviously it goes much deeper than that, and the roots of all of this, you know, religion and Christianity goes way deeper than that. But yeah, like I want to come back to talking about the sense of survival and let's call it thrival, if that's a word. I'm not sure it is.
Thrival.
Let's call it.
It's a word now.
So if we look at, one thing I'm trying to be, well, when I say try, I hate that word because when you try, it's like you're not really doing it. You got to be doing it, right? So, you know, if I've been trying to do something, it's like I'm not really giving enough effort. It's like
I've been doing not trying.
That's true. It's a difficult word. And so, over the last couple of months, I've been not trying. I've been creating a sense of, or I've been forming a sense of being my own creator of my potential, right? And I know that, and with my faith is that I know that God is behind all of it. And that's something that I'm also working on becoming stronger in. But this idea of becoming the creator means that you can create the life you want to live. You know, you don't have to conform to the life you've always known, because all the beliefs or all the things and the perception of reality that you've ever known, if you're not happy with that, if you're not content with that, if that's not working for you, then it's time to change. And now in a time like this, it's the more of a time than ever to make those changes, right? And so I think, and this is another thing out of Joe Dispenza's book called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, comparing this idea of, well, if I'm in survival mode, I feel like one thing, and in creation, it's the opposite. So for example, in survival, I'll experience stress. In creation, homeostasis, which is basically when all your endocrine system and your body is at a sense of peace and happiness, right? You know, we've got dis-ease if I'm in survival, and health in creation. Imbalance in survival, order in creation. And we're not seeing much order right now in terms of all these viral videos. But what we are seeing order in is all the politicians of the world doing their best. And yes, there's some duds here and there. I'm not going to mention any names, but like we are seeing some incredible order all over the world, not just to nations or anything, all over the world. So I love that. We've got breakdown in survival and repair in creation. So all these different things, I'm almost going to take a screenshot of this and put it on my social media so people can see. But like on this idea of creation, which is what I'm talking about in terms of your personal reality, which becomes your personality, right? Your personal reality. We need to take that inventory now in all this time we have by ourselves in solitude to create a life that we want. So like you said, stop, what was it? Stop, act, think, feel.
Stop, think, act.
Stop, think, act. Okay.
Can I put a bit of a break on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Only a small break on it, right? The danger with that thought process, and it's all good what you just came out with, I certainly applaud all of that. It's showing the two different ways of thinking. And if you want to put it simply, it's either negative thinking breeds all those things that you read out, positive thinking brings about health. Negative disease, positive health, and that all makes sense, The break I'll slightly put on it is that if we think we are the creators of our own destiny, then we're a little bit in dangerous ground too. In other words, don't do it alone. And if there's some people listening to the podcast who think that we're conveying, hey, you can sort it all out yourself, then that's dangerous.
Right.
I think all that stuff is really good, but get someone to help you move on from disease into health, get someone to move you from imbalance to homeostasis, we need, because again, we are social creatures, we need to spur one another on. There's another verse in the Bible, it says spur one another on to love and to good works, right? And our good works is, let's talk more like this of what's happening. We're all in this together, right? We all have to be careful of what we're doing to help each other. Otherwise, we might kill someone through just by touching them.
That's the consequence.
Which is scary, but if we all do what we're told and early in the piece, then it won't happen. And if we're all on the same page with that, and we all recognise that now we do need our politicians to show leadership. We could say a lot of bad stuff about pollies and that, Last time I went to an election, I said to the scrutineer, do we have a choice in who we vote for? And she said, oh yeah, you've got a choice here, Labor, Liberal, Democrats or whatever, I said, oh right, so I can vote a non-politician in? She laughed.
So you wrote Chris Rubie on the pallet and vote for me.
So, the thing is, we need each other in this time more than ever.
There's a sense of, so we have to find a balance between, because there is some part of that personal, hang on, I need to stop and think and realize. But then in that, yes, we need to look at, who do I have already for support? And if I don't have people, how do I get people for support? And we do live in a time where there's beautiful online communities that anyone can find.
Yeah.
And if you have insecurities based on your ethnicity, location, any demographic, whatever, you can find where you can, a community where you can become anonymous and still be a part of something. So we do have that, so we can use that. But what you said as well about this idea of, we thrive together. I've experienced that many times with you because you're my father, right? Unfortunately, you created this, so you're responsible for this, and I'm pointing at myself.
And God created you through me.
Well, right, okay, so you're going deeper, one step deeper. I like it, but don't deflect. You created me, so now when shit hits the fan with me, even though I'm a 30-year-old man now, I still want to come to those who love and support me over the years for that chance to stop. For that chance to think and make those steps, right? So in this time when we are in solitude, I think what we can probably summarize by saying here is that we need to look at who we have in our lives for support and how can we reach them.
At the moment we think we have a monopoly on the truth, or that we've learnt it all, we're in trouble.
Right.
I think every person, even in the greatest leader in the world today, I don't know who would be the greatest, but those leaders that we see in the forefront there, most of the time they've got advisors and mentors. In the Bible, we read about kings having advisors. So none of the decision that you see from Scott Morrison or any of these leaders here is their decision alone. They've consulted other people too. Scott Morrison has obviously consulted the health officials and what's the best, do we close the schools or not? I need some advice on this so I can tell the country. But it's not him keeping the doors open in the schools. So we can't say, oh, you should be closing the school. Look at this country here. He's, in his advice, is making the best decision available to him at this point in time. So we are in it all together. And let's just say you and I were the only people that existed on this earth, right? And the coronavirus came from the dog or whatever, and we had to isolate ourselves from each other, right? We would have to find some way of communicating so that we could get through it together. To try and do it on our own, we might not learn as much, because I might, say for example now, I think you mentioned it earlier on, somebody, a husband and wife playing a jigsaw puzzle, what can we do?
Yeah, that was your son and daughter.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Not just some random. Even though they moved to LA, they still exist out there.
You mean I got more of you? So we can together come up with creative ways of dealing with this issue.
So creative ways. So one thing Jay Shetty was talking about, which I just listened to, was some creative ways. So now, yes, we have technology where we can call people and send messages. We need to do that at a higher rate than ever before now. Use that, right? And also, not only that, write people some letters. Send them letters, send them videos of you. You can call someone up as a video call and cook dinner together, or you can read a book together. You can even exercise together. There's so many cool things you can be doing and using what we do have now during a time like this. We need to do that.
An old cliche, united we stand, divided we fall, comes in my thoughts at the moment. I went to a meeting the other day, probably the last meeting I'll be able to attend, of chaplains, right? It was just a dinner meeting, get together, catch up and everything. And somehow, not everyone showed up because of this social distancing. And I think there was only 5 of us in the end. But because there was only 5, it created an environment where we started to share a couple of things. And it sort of gathered, and when one person shared that their marriage was falling apart. And we thought, well, we never thought that. We've known this person for a long time. They always look as though they got it together, but he felt safe in that smaller group to begin sharing that. Next minute, the door was flung wide open and everybody had a major issue that they were able to share in this group. And the good thing that came out of it, and one of them is very techno-savvy, she said, I'm going to set up something on Facebook that we can access just our group, a support group, and through these troubled times, let's keep checking in with each other to see how we're going. Hey, how are you going with the solitude? What are you doing? This has helped me. What's helping you? And we share ideas to carry us through this pandemic.
I love that, and I've experienced that on its truest form in self-help meetings. So with Gamblers Anonymous, I've been to I'm part of a group that I go to maybe once every month or two, and they do that. It's like, well, this is what hurts me, this is what scares me, and then because we all have kind of common ground, someone else can look at that and go, oh, well, that's understandable, I can understand that, and that scares me too. And so when you show them that scar, it gives permission for someone else to open up their wounds and go through that, right? And in my last probably 3 or 4 months, because I've mentioned that I've been doing a lot of my own self-isolating just because of my own probably lack of energy, a lot of guilt, shame, fear, whatever it might be, all these negative things. I've even created this, it's healing up now, but some bodily results from that. I've got this rash on my face that I've never seen before, and this is my body telling me. So not only have we got the world telling us one thing with this epidemic that's going on, but I've got things, we all have things inside our bodies that will start showing. So if you're listening and you have some sort of ailment or some sort of bodily issue, it's usually an internal thing that's going on, trying to get out of you. So it's got to be a sign, right? And I've gone on a bit of a tangent here, but yeah, coming back to this idea of, well, when we get together and we share those common grounds of fear and what's really going on, that's an opportunity to grow, because we can truly understand each other. We can let our guard down and become vulnerable. Through vulnerability, we become stronger as a community and stronger as an individual.
I mean, there is a time of solitude where you've got to look in on yourself first. I'm not saying we should be ringing each other up every minute of the day as a support, because there is a time of self-reflection that's healthy. But if we can come to the point where we thought we can't solve all our problems, we need another perspective on it. People might see something different than I'm seeing. You were talking about someone that you saw that had some problems, and you drew attention to them, and then they stopped doing it, and yet they'd been doing it for some time. It just needed a trigger to a self-realization that other people are seeing what you're doing to yourself, So,
and the only way that I think that can really have an effect without it being some sort of attack or judgment is to say, well, this is what scares me, and you know what's vulnerable about me, and through this I see something in you that you may not see, and I just want to bring it to your awareness.
And back to that other word, love. You're communicating love. I care about you. I see what you're doing to yourself or your body, or your mental state. I see what you're doing, and I want to help you. Like, did you realize that this is what I'm seeing? Because they see themselves every day, and they might not see the immediate effect, but you who see that person every now and then, it's more acute, isn't it? Or seemingly more acute, because you're seeing it. Gee, look, I noticed you lost weight. I haven't seen you for a week, but you've lost weight. But that person doesn't realise that they're losing weight, or whatever. So yeah, I think there's a balance there. In yes, the solitude is going to be really good for us. Challenging the way we live our life, particularly in the Western world. And it's great seeing the fish back in the seas, or I think it was Venice when you were saying the fish and the dolphins are appearing. And I've been to Venice, and I wouldn't have swam in that water, and the fish weren't either. But now they can, because there's no human pollution going in there. So maybe that'll sharpen them up to think, hey, look what we've done to our waterways here. We need to change the way we're putting the drainage in, or whatever.
That's right. When we come out of this, there's going to be some reevaluations of how we go about things in the mass-producing industries.
Otherwise, we are all going to die. Maybe not a coronavirus, but other issues, health issues.
Another global pandemic will happen in 80 years' time again, in a different form. It'll be inevitable if we don't take care of ourselves in the world, right?
Yeah, and we may get a vaccine for coronavirus, and I'm confident they probably will, but in the end, the other fallout has to be addressed as well, not just the virus, but the fallout is, what the fallout has been that we've had to stop doing.
Yes.
And now it's more sharply in our minds, because we say, wow, fish in Venice canals, never seen that before. Yeah. We must have been doing something wrong before,
Yes, and I'm incredibly passionate about this, and it's almost created a new fire inside of me in terms of that side of things. So yes, we're experiencing on a global scale two epidemics. One is the actual virus itself and the science behind it, and the suffering and all that. But the other side is this socialism side of it, and this behavioralism and the economy and all that. That's being tested, and it's going to change. So we've got two global things going on that are obviously concurrent, but they're also separate in different ways. And I'm quite passionate about spending more time and doing more podcasts and doing more research into that side of what I have been studying and what I would continue to study. And I'm looking forward to how things are going to peel out over the next couple of weeks, months, or however long this sort of goes on for. But to wrap up today, though, because we could go on for hours, and I've been told that even though you're all in isolation, in solitude for 24/7, I know that your attention spans are small. And I also know that there's a rush to now go and reach out to your community through your social platforms and and connect with each other. So any last words for the people listening? Father Chris. Well, I shouldn't say Father Chris, you're not a priest, but you are my father. So
yeah, okay, so you could say that, yeah. No, I think we've covered most of what we wanted to cover today. But I guess 2 words, don't panic. Don't panic. And the other word I'd throw out there is learn. Learn from what this is teaching us. And we can come out of this better people. Even if it's only in your own little world, you can become a better carer for others because you've realised how important it is, social contact. So learn from the experience. And yes, it'll be hard for all of us. And I've had 1 week of it already, of not being able to go to work and time on my hands. So I've had to discipline myself so I don't become lazy and just sit in front of Netflix all day. And say, no, what can you do that's productive today? We don't always have to be productive. We can also be reflective as well. And so, okay, how can I fill my day? Okay, part of my day has got to be walking the dog down there, which I don't normally get the opportunity. Now I have a golden opportunity to have more time down where I can sit and look at the water and reflect a bit about where I'm heading. So I'm going to use this as a piece of gold that's come my way.
Yeah, and I think that's great. And I want to say more. And I will say just one last little bit on that is that the overall thing here is to have gratitude, right, for what we do have and not what we don't have. And this is something that gets talked about all the time. And we've talked about it before, but now more than ever, because when life goes on its normal route, we're trying to get. I need to get more money so I can get this and I can go on a holiday here and I can go do this and I can buy this. And you can't do any of that now.
No.
You are forced now to look at what you do have, not what you don't have, because what you don't have, you actually cannot get right now, for the most part, right? And we all know toilet paper is one of the biggest commodities, but if you think about it, like I know friends who have cancelled their whole, 1 year traveling trip and gone back to their home country and all sorts of things. Everything's taken away from you, and the only way to make sure we stay not just sane, but we thrive through this is to have gratitude and love for what we do have and not what we don't have. And everybody can do that on their own scale. It's not about comparing to others, but it's about, just taking that personal inventory of what is important to you. And you mentioned going down and walking your dog. Some people in some countries can't walk their dog. Yeah. But what they can do in their own scale, it may be different. They can still exercise in their room. They can still Skype their family in other countries. Whatever it is, be grateful for what you do have, not what you don't have.
And the last thing I'll say is that, back to that verse, right? Let's spend time in seeking out God and asking Him to show us where we can improve. Let's say, sorry for polluting our waterways, I'll be more mindful of that in the future. And just saying sorry, the word repentance actually means turning away from your old ways, right? Mm. In other words, a turning around. That's what the Greek word means, right? But we need to not just say sorry, but also repent means to turn a new leaf, do something different. So let's look at what we can do differently. We can't fix the whole of Australia's problems, but we can certainly fix the problems in our life by, I don't know, instead of driving 2 kilometres to the shop, walk to it or something. Yeah. There's lots of little ways we can do to stop the carbon footprint, stop polluting our waters, have more interaction with others, and I just think there's a golden time for us, really. I just hope not too many people will be affected by it and that we lose too many of our people. But
beautiful. There's got to be a saying here that I don't understand that really sums all that up.
Yes.
You've got one in there somewhere. Like throwing the baby out of the bathwater. You've got to have some sort of saying here to finish us off.
Well, now you put me on the spot and I can't think of one. But probably when we switch off the mic, I'll probably think of it. I should have said that.
Yeah, all right, well, thanks for the episode today, and I'm hoping that we can do a lot more of this, because I hate to stroke your ego, but of all the podcast episodes I did, your one was the most talked about amongst my huge community of followers.
Don't throw accolades, just throw money.
Well, we don't have that anymore.
Damn it, that's right.
All right.